All right, like, click, and subscribe, do all that. You already know what time it is. It's Netflix time. This movie's called The Outsider. An American soldier imprisoned in post-war Japan enters the dark world of the yakuza, adapting their way of life in repayment for his freedom. So it's a Japanese crime drama that came out 2018. It's 2 hours long. Spoiler alert to the motherfucking max. Yeah. And so here we have Nick. Now Nick here is doing time in jail. He's doing janitor work. For what he's in there for, they never really expounded on. He's cleaning up the shower and he sees a bunch of guys coming out. But you can tell by that look in his face, he suspects something's up. He goes in after it left to see that this guy's hanging to death. And I'm like, oh shit. Yeah, so right off the back, we're starting off with some crazy shit. This officer and a couple of security guards are telling him Nick to mind his own business, and they end up giving him a bunch of lashes. Yeah, they fucked him up and put him in solitary confinement. Then he's telling this guy, like, yeah, nobody knows you're here and all that. I guess before all that took place, he was trying to send a note or a message to somebody. Because they stick him in the same room with Nick. By the way, his name is Kiyoshi. See, Kiyoshi plans on doing something crazy to get himself sent into the emergency ward. And he needs Nick to call for help when it happens. Why the emergency ward? Because it'll be easier for his brothers to pick him up from that location. So after they get done working in the fields, they go back to their cells where Kiyoshi cuts his stomach completely open. Nick is calling for the guards. I won't show it, but the way he slit his stomach open was ridiculous. I'm not sure how much time passed, but Nick shaved his face and he's now finally free. There was a car already waiting for him. So now he's in a room with a bunch of Japanese men. See, Kiyoshi is actually part of the Shiramatsu clan, which in large effect is one piece of the Yakuza clan. This guy named Orochi asks Nick to approach a guy about the steel mill contract. He wants Nick to, unquote, quote unquote, persuade and handle the situation. Yeah, that's like Joe Pesci coming up to you like, yeah, we're gonna take care of the situation. Come on, son. Well, anyway, they give him lodgings for the night so he can get ready for tomorrow's mission. He buys a beer from this waiter, who we find out later on is Kiyoshi's sister. He gets his room and gets settled for the next day. Next day, he's heading over towards the steel mill. He talks to this guy who's not budging, talking about Japanese. He just can't stand the Japanese or whatever like that. He tells Nick about how he hates selling Japanese products back to them because of the steel and all that stuff that they use for war. You can tell Nick trying not hearing none of that shit. Nick tells him to sell, but he's not budging. So then he bashes him over the head with his own fucking typewriter. So as they get back in Nick's car, Kiyoshi asks, did you kill him? Nick says, nah, but he got the message. Now look at his face. I mean, goddamn. So yeah, they're just chilling in the club, they're telling random ass jokes. And then these dudes come through from the Nagata clan, talking about the steel mill workers working for us, you fucking up our plans. See, the Uranagi clan is trying to take over Osaka, but the problem is the Shiromasi clan is in their way. It's pretty much the old versus the new, you know what I'm saying, different ways of life. He talks about how that boss is half retired. He's like, man, come on, it's time for y'all to move out the way. So you can tell already in the look of Nick's face, you know he's about to snap. Nick gets a bottle out of nowhere and smashes it across the top of his face. And then the guns are drawn, but it was just a warning shot and they back off for now. So after all that, Nick goes back to where he resided, this hole-in-the-wall apartment. But then Kiyoshi wakes him up in the middle of the night, and then they drive off, and he gets him a better apartment to stay in. He says there's a suit in the closet and tells him to be ready for tomorrow. My bad, ready on for later for him tonight, because he's got some other shit got to pop off. They go to watch a Japanese play. Now keep in mind, this is Osaka in 1954. A lot of their plays back then involved a lot of tragedy. Like a Japanese Romeo and Juliet. So anyway, after that, they head to the basement, where some people down there are gambling. And the guy running this establishment, his name is Kimura. Apparently, Kimura's been trying to run some shit under the table because he's been running these gambling rings without paying. Kimura tells Kiyoshi that he'll pay double or whatever like that, but you know he ain't trying to hear that shit. So he ends up stabbing this nigga. Done deal, dead. And then they dip out. Tell my man, we part of the Yakuza. You don't play that shit. You don't fuck with the Yakuza, son. Try to tell you. Back at the club, Oroshi's hating on Nick. Because, you know, he keeps telling Kiyoshi, like, yo, what's he doing? I mean, what is he really hanging around for? What else does he need to be here for? But, you know, Kiyoshi knows what Nick done for him, you know what I'm saying? They stick as thieves, you know what I'm saying? He tells Nick this story about, like, you know, if you dishonor your boss, but you want to have remorse, you got to cut your fingers off. Or a couple of them. I forgot the actual term for it, but I'm like, that's some harsh shit. But bottom line is, we don't tolerate dishonor out here in these streets. So as they're watching the dance floor, Kiyoshi sees his sister down there. He asks Nick to take her home, apparently because she's too drunk or he just don't want her to be there. He drops her off at the house, but she invites him in, and I'm thinking to myself, Nick, don't do it. And he ends up going in, but apparently somebody was in the car watching him, but who was it? Next morning they wake up, you already know what time it is. Nick was already up with his suit on, but we all know what happened. So next day Nick meets up with Kiyoshi, he has another assignment for him. It's a shipment of guns that's supposed to be headed to the port dock and they got to pay for some money for him. But the thing is, because Nick is not Japanese, he's the only one that can go because the Shiromatu clan, they can't be spotted at the area or location. And they tell him if things go wrong, he's got to take the fall for the shit. So he's aware of that and understands the situation. So Nick gets to the port and he finds this guy dead. So he's gotta be thinking to himself something's up. And who intercepted the transit? The Uranagi clan. They are back again. So at this point it was a setup and Nick is about to be left for dead. But apparently as he's about to get shot, he was able to flip the gun over on him and is shooting and pointing at the guys. I was like, how did he get that close to where he could flip the situation around and reverse it like that? So in that situation, Nick got lucky as fuck. In the next scene, we had Mr. Shiramatsu himself. Looking pissed off, obviously, this ain't good for the rest of the crew. So obviously because the situation happened, they know it was a traitor amongst their midst. But they're not sure who. I really couldn't figure it out until halfway through the movie. So anyway, they assumed Nick messed up, and to pay his loyalty, he let him chop off both of his fingers. And Kiyoshi stood right by him as they chopped off one of his fingers. I will not show it because it looks fucking disgusting. The fingers were brought into a box to Mr. Uranagi himself. Yeah, it was some ill shit back then. So later that day, Mr. Shiramatsu brings Nick to the forest. Thinking to myself, oh shit, Nick about to get done in. But it turns out it's actually a ceremony for him to officially become part of the yakuza. Basically, you ain't got no other family, we your family. And you know the only way you leave out of that family in a fucking box. After the ceremony, Nick and Kiyoshi talks. He knows that he's smashing his sister. He's like, come on, son. He tells her just stay away from her from now on. Then he tells you this crazy-ass story. It's one of those crazy-ass war stories from his dad. It's crazy. So as he's getting some signature tattoos on his back, who's there with him? That's right, Kiyoshi's sister, Mira. And they start explaining the meanings of the fish on the tattoos, which I'm not even exactly sure about. And which, of course, they get it in again. He gives some speech about flowing with the current. Basically, the heart wants what the heart wants. You know what I'm saying? So everything's good. He's riding the bus, and then all of a sudden he sees this dude from the Uranagi clan. Like, oh boy, here we go. But nothing jumped off on the subway. But we all know it's coming. So Uranagi's supposed to be setting up a meeting with Shiramatsu to discuss business rearrangements. But the thing is, he didn't even show up to the meeting. Shiramatsu obviously takes it as disrespect that she's sending college kids over to do this meeting. And then on top of that, he wants part of the land that he runs. Because the Uranagi, he gives him all the money he wants, but he really wants control. But obviously, they ain't trying to have none of that shit. Alright, so now they back at the club. It's Hiroshi, Kiyoshi, and Nick. Kiyoshi gets up and Hiroshi starts telling Nick this story. He tells him a story about how he got into the Yakuza, but I won't tell the story for you. I'll let you watch it for yourself. So after that, Hiroshi tries to talk to the boss, but the boss ain't trying to hear from him right now. So, I guess he feeling some type of way. Come to find out, he comes to meet up with Kiyoshi's sister. And we find out that they had a prior relationship. So that's why this nigga been hating on Nick. So at one point they still talking. He says he still likes her or whatever like that. And he almost takes advantage of her in the scene. So yeah, at this point he tries to apologize or whatever like that. But I'm guessing the only reason he did because he must have seen the scissors in her hand. So in the next scene we get to a sumo wrestling competition where both the Shiramatsu clan and the Uranagi clan. Plans don't work out and eventually you know that these two clans are going to clash heads. But then Nick gets separated from the group and he sees this military guy that he knows back in the day. Apparently he was with Nick and his battalion when he was in the army when he led an invasion over to Japan. And because of Nick's ties, he can't have this guy in the way. This guy was begging to chill with Nick and he was about to blackmail him. So he said, you know what? I'm just going to invite him up to the room. So he invites him up to his apartment. And as he's going to grab for a beer, he ends up slitting this guy's throat, killing him instantly. The next day, Nick goes to visit Mihan, and he finds out she was attacked. He doesn't know it was by Orochi, though. And on top of that, she tells him that she's pregnant. But he's really more concerned about who put hands on her. And you know she's not going to tell him that, because we already know what happens. He goes to Kiyoshi, tells him the situation. They have a couple of drinks. He tells him his story about his father. He hands over some swords and tells him, you're in charge of his sister now. You have to protect her. And then Kiyoshi helps him out with the military guy that came to his house. Back with the Uranagi clan, we found out that Orochi was the traitor. I fucking knew it was Orochi. I fucking knew it. I swear to goodness. Next day, they go to a random suit store to get Shiramatsu a tailor-made suit. But while they were waiting, Nick gets this funny feeling. And this dude that works with Orochi was trying to choke out Shiramatsu to death. So Kiyoshi end up laying a smackdown. They shoot him and get him a done deal. They make an escape back to the car. But the car wasn't starting. These niggas run up on the car and start shooting at the driver. Nick and Shiramatsu was in the back seat. But Kiyoshi ends up dying, damn it. You already know Nick about to be on some shit. Nick is trying to console Mira, obviously, for, brother dying. Then they go on a rampage. They found up with some random chick, and Nick about to get him got. And that's what happened. And then the crews meet at the warehouse for one last confrontation. And there's Orochi's bitch ass showing his face, the traitor. He tries to convince Shiramatsu one more time to sell. He refuses. They still end up hugging. But as he's hugging, he's stabbing her right in the back with a knife. Literally stabbed right in the back. And because Shiramatsu's dead, now the Uranagi clan controls all the territory. Police came through and burnt down their casinos. Nick later that night goes to pick up Miri and tells her to pack her things. We gotta get the hell up out of here. But before all that happens, he has one more mission. He walks straight into the lion's den so he can challenge Orochi one-on-one. But Orochi says no because he doesn't respect him as a yakuza. So Nick says, fuck you, and slices his motherfucking neck off. Orochi, you done deal out here in these streets. Done deal, dead. And after that, he's done and they let him go. After that, he comes back to the clan, what little they have left. And I guess from that point on, they're just left alone. And that's The Outsider for you. I highly recommend it. Check that joint out. The Outsider, Netflix. Like, click, subscribe, do all that. You already know what time it is. Lick DZ, all DZ, Mr. Big, you got that slogan.